Hello and welcome to Yorkshire. I'm Bryony Turford from Primary Science Geeks, and I'm really delighted you've chosen to come along to this session to chat space with me today. There's going to be a chance to interact, so make sure you've got a piece of paper handy. If you're not already using your phone, get it handy, and if you are an Android user, download a free QR code reader, and if you're an Apple user, just open your device on your camera, because I'm going to be using a lot of QR codes. When I get to the first one, I'll talk you through what to do if you're not familiar with using them first, but the idea is that you can then access all the resources that I'm sharing today in your own way, at your leisure, perhaps after this session. But fear not, if that's not possible for you, you can contact me at the end of the session for a full resource list. There will also be times maybe where I'm a little bit quiet, and that's because I'm just pausing to let you take things in. I haven't disappeared, I promise, or to let you ponder a question that I might have posed at you. So today's session is all about space as a context for children's scientific learning. So learning scientifically through the context of space rather than necessarily learning about space. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm going to share with you some of the vast range of resources that ESRO UK, the organisation I'm here representing as a space champion, today. Okay, let's get started. I thought we'd start with a bit of a quiz. And perhaps this is where you might just want to make a couple of notes, and I'm going to show you some space spin-offs. And by space spin-offs, I mean a technological development that has been developed for us to use here on planet Earth, that was originally designed for space and then adapted for our use on planet Earth. So here's the first one. So what's the connection between moon boots, the boots that the first people to walk on the moon used, and trainers in England that we might use now, or we might wear, or perhaps we've not worn them very much recently. What's the connection between the moon and a joystick? So something was developed for use on the moon that we now use the technology in a joystick or a gaming pad. Next one is the robotic arm used on the ISS being the International Space Station, and a hospital, particularly operating theatres. What kind of connection do you think there might be there? The fourth one is an astronaut, particularly their clothing, and a firefighter, and again their clothing. So what do you think was developed for an astronaut and for a firefighter? And finally, an ear thermometer and a star. So the technology used for taking the temperature of an ear, taking body temperature through the means of an ear, and a star. Okay, I'll just give you a moment or two if you haven't already made a couple of notes. So let's get some answers and see where we go. I imagine you probably found this one quite easy. It's to do with the soul, the technology that's in the comfort of the soul. Obviously, walking on the moon is a very rocky surface. The shock absorbers in those boots were really important to the comfort of the astronauts. And actually, that's hugely important in how we develop trainer technology today. The second one was around a joystick, and that was originally developed to help steer the lunar rover around the moon. If you imagine an astronaut wearing their enormous EVA gloves, that's extravehicular activity gloves, some people might call it spacewalk, the traditional sort of white suit, if you like. The gloves are massive, they're absolutely huge, so being able to do very fine things is quite difficult whilst wearing that. So if they have more fitted features, like we just might have our hands all put in a thin pair of gloves, we can still do quite small things. But actually that joystick allowed very small, precise movements to be made while still wearing the suit. The third one is to do with the robotic arms. So some of the stuff that's carried out, the maintenance work that's carried out on the ISS is done remotely through robots, and again using joystick technology from inside the ISS, or sometimes even on planet Earth it can be connected. But that remote technology is used in small operations, robotic operations in surgery on patients. and to do with the suits, the materials, the lightweight, the fire resistant, heat proof or heat resistant. Firefighters have to face extreme temperatures, as do astronauts, and that technology was originally developed for astronauts. And the final one, this one I had no idea on, the ear thermometer. There's actually an infrared lens in infrared sensor in that ear thermometer, and that's the same technology that was originally developed to detect the birth of stars. So looking through telescopes, etc., using that technology to detect the birth of stars. Cool, hey? Just thought we'd start with a few facts. I like a space fact. There's a few of them that will pop up during this session. I'm going to tell you now a little bit more about the organisation I'm here to represent. ESRO, or ESRO, depending on how you pronounce it, is the European Education Resource Office, sorry, Space Education Resource Office, which is a subsection of ESA, the European Space Agency. You may well have heard of those. UK Space Agency is the organisation that is funding our space work. So, for example, supported Tim Peake's mission, but then it all comes part of ESA, the European Space Agency, and the Education Office, the spin-off, is ESRO UK. And as you can see from the map, there are quite a few ESRO offices around Europe, and they are supporting the primary and secondary education community all across Europe. And I'm fortunate enough to be a space champion for ESRO UK. Our job is, my job as a space champion, and there are a few of me around the country, is to support schools mainly through the offer of free space CPD, which is what is being offered obviously here today. So ESRO have many arms, if you like. I'm going to tell you lots about the ESRO resources that are all free and available, and you are participating in ESRO CPD. I'm going to touch a little bit on the Space Education Quality Mark. I am here representing a space ambassador as well as a space champion, STEM ambassador as well as a space champion. I'll get my tongue out in a minute. I'm going to mention Mission X and various other bits and pieces around this diagram, but our mission is to support children of all backgrounds to deliver, teachers to support all children to deliver world-class STEM education. Okay, so the first resource I want to talk to you about is one you've actually already just been playing with. Those space spin-offs were taken from this resource, and it's a really nice, freely accessible resource, as are all of them. And this one particularly focuses on STEM careers and giving children a bit of an insight into what STEM career they might have or they might be interested in, or just opening a few doors about what's out there. And as with a lot of these resources, they were originally funded and created when Tim Peake sort of set off on his mission in 2015 to go to space. So it features a lot about Tim. It features his mission patch, and there's an opportunity for children to design their own mission patches. But when I come to a new resource, each slide will look like this. It'll have a bit of a picture of the resource itself, a bit of introduction, a title, and here in the corner a QR code. And so if you've got a QR code reader, or you can use your camera on your phone, if you just hold it over that on the screen, over that QR code, that will take you straight to the particular bit of the ESRO website where this resource is held. And my reason for doing that is the resources that are there are so plentiful that if you go and start to search, you'll probably, a bit like me, get lost in the mountains of incredible stuff that there is. So if you want to specifically go to this resource, that QR code will take you there. But generally our webpage, which is listed at the end, will take you to them more broadly. Okay, so the activity I want to show you out of this one is called Careers in the Space Sector. And this would be a lovely activity to do with a class of children. It could be perhaps forming part of a display that developed over the whole of a topic around space. But the idea is that you try and come up with a career that is linked to every letter of the alphabet. So it could be a very simple display. And I thought you might like to have a little bit of a go and see if you can get some of the more tricky letters. So, I'll give you A is for astronaut. And if your family is anything like mine, we play a lot of A to Z game, or the ABC game as my son calls it, in the car on long journeys. I always have to end up doing cricket players or football teams or food. So I quite enjoyed doing one that wasn't on those things. So careers in the space sector. And while you're having a little play, I'm going to pop a little bit of music on in the background. I'm going to give you probably just over a minute or so, just to see if you can make any head and tail of any of these careers. A is for astronaut, you've already got.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Lock your Soyuz hatch and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Detach from station and may God's love be with you. Ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade. And the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. But it's time to guide the capsule if you dare. It's Major Tom to ground control. I've left forevermore. And I'm floating in a most peculiar way. The stars look very different today.
It's really hard to know when to stop that song because I love it so much. So you were listening there to an astronaut singing in space with his own guitar. That was Commander Chris Hadfield, who is a Canadian astronaut. You may have heard him, and in fact, if you watched Tim Peake's launch into space, he was hosting with Dara O'Brien at the Science Museum in London, the live feed. He's quite a recognisable character. He's got a moustache. He also has a twin brother who they did some really interesting studies into the impact of space on your body over a long period of time. So one twin was in space for 12 months, the other for 6 months, and they were able to, because they were identical twins, they were able to look really closely at the differences that makes to your body, etc. So if you want to watch that video, if you go to YouTube and type Commander Chris Hadfield Space Oddity, also one of my favourite Bowie songs, it'll come up. All the astronauts are allowed to take items of special importance to them, and Chris chose to take a guitar. So there are a couple of other videos of him playing and singing. This one remains my favourite. And in fact, it was when I was doing a space topic with a class of year sixes, we used YouTube a lot to bring it to life, really, because a lot of astronauts stream while they're on the International Space Station or travelling, and they can do some of those. Children always want to know, how do you wee in space, or what happens to your, how do you have a wash, how do you make your dinner with everything floating around? And over the years, various astronauts have done all sorts of fantastic videos that you can watch. So just a little top tip there for maximum use of YouTube. Okay, so how do we get on? Here's a little list that I pulled together. Some of them were taken from the resource, but if you look at the resource yourself, you'll see that I've taken some of them and spaced them up a bit. They were more generically around STEM careers, and I spaced them a bit. So X, Y, and Z were not particularly easy. You might have found some that I didn't. I'm sure there's lots that you will have come across. I wonder if anybody got solar physicist for S. Perhaps if you watched Helen Mason's session this morning, or perhaps if you're watching online, you can find Helen Mason's session. You might be interested to listen to her talk about her job. She is a specialist in ultraviolet and X-ray spectrums of the sun, and she's really, really passionate, like we all are, about inspiring youngsters to learn more about the sun through her project, funded by the STFC, the Science Technology Facilities Council. You'll hear more about those later. Her project is called Sun Space Art, so if you haven't already been to that session or want to find out more about it, a quick Google and it'll bring it up. But actually, where I found most of my careers from was actually going onto the jobs website of NASA, of the American Space Agency, and ESA and other other space agencies, and look at what jobs they have advertised. So, you know, an ocean and ice senior scientist might not necessarily be something you would associate directly with space, but there was many sort of brilliant facts. I'll probably drop a few in during this session around when Tim Peake went to space, which was a huge moment for UK space travel. But one of my favourite facts was that every astronaut that goes into space, there are 30,000 jobs created around that astronaut. So although we might have aspirations to be that one person that goes into space, that actually if we think, well, I could be involved in space, not necessarily be an astronaut, because I'm fascinated by space. I've learned loads about it since I've started doing this job, and have a general sort of geeky, all-round geeky fascination with it. But actually, I don't want to go to space. I've never had a desire to actually go myself, but I'm really interested in lots of the other jobs that could be around it, and maybe that might be some children in your class too. Anyway, I hope you managed to get a few, and perhaps you might consider using that one. So let's think about another resource then. So there's another QR code on the screen here. You might want to click on that. This is Mission X. Mission X is supported by ESRO UK, so the UK version is hosted by ESRO UK, and it's all about training like an astronaut. The next challenge period, as in when it's live, is starts 4th of January, so straight after Christmas, but the sign up is available now. So if you go to that QR code, it'll take you straight to the Mission X page. You click on sign up, and then all the flags of all the countries across the world that take part in it, and you can see from the logo it's a global challenge, and you find your country. If you're based in the UK, click on the UK flag. Also, there's an option if you are in a country that are not yet part of it, you can apply through the UK flag. And then there's a simple form to fill in, and you're registered, and you'll get all the contacts when it's ready. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, for assuming you sign up, for your children, your class, your school, and just give you a little flavour of what it's like. There are two aspects to Mission X. There's a scientific aspect and a physical aspect. So it fits very well with the opportunities for children to be working outside, incorporating into PE lessons, as well as obviously directly into space. So we've got the science activities are largely around health and nutrition. So you can see they're not directly about learning about space. They are about learning about how important it is for astronauts and us to be fit and healthy and eat appropriately. And then the physical ones are based on some of the missions that the astronauts did in space, or do while they're training to go into space, and have been adapted for children to do, with really clear guidance as to where they've come from and what they're about. So here's just a really quick screen grab of some of them. The hydration station you might fancy having a go at. That's when they get to make wee samples, which they have always really enjoyed whenever I've done that with children. And that's really, I'm talking about the importance of hydration, etc. So you can see there's many languages that these programs some of them are available in. All of them are in English, but you can access them all through other languages should that be a need. So you just click on the activity you want to do. The one that I've chosen to talk to you about is called Building a Bionic Hand. And I have tried with all of the activities I'm going to share with you to put it into context for where it might fit. So this one I've chosen to put in with the bit about humans, that's about muscles and skeleton, to help with support and movement, and children really understanding how that's built. So they're going to build their own bionic hand based on their own hand. So there's an opportunity there for them to work alone. All the materials are readily available classroom materials. So what I've taken is the activity in stages and just photographed it for you so you can see how it would build up. So first of all, you can see I've used a bit of cardboard packaging from a cereal box. You draw around your hand. All of these instructions, by the way, are on the website, but I think it's just nice to see one of them come alive so you can see what it might look like. Cut out the hand. And then using either an X-ray or an image, or the children feeling their own fingers, they're looking for how many bones are in each digit. And some children may already know there are 3, some children may not. They might think that they're connected, or they've got bendy bits in them. It's a really good opportunity for them to unpick how the hand is structured. And you can see there's straws that have been used to represent those bones, and they're hollow at the moment. That'll become clear as to why in a moment. So to connect them, we need to get the muscles and tendons. So this uses a piece of string that passes through the 3 bones into the hand. You can see that starting to build up, and you can see the folds, and those folds have been made based on where they are on my hand. And then we need more bones in the middle of the hand, and those muscles and tendons travel through those 2. So to be able to move as a, oops, sorry, I'll go back a second, to use it as a bionic slide, I've got mine here, and hopefully you can see me waving. The middle one's being a bit rude, I do apologise. There we go. With my cereal packets. So the children get a really good idea of how their own hand uses, and actually there's ideas within the resource for you to really go much further than this and genuinely make a bionic hand that that can be used to pick up things, can be put inside the children's sleeve or coat, and can they pick something up with it, can they write with it, what's easy, what's difficult, and that's just one of many ideas that are in Mission X. Okay, here's the next one. This is one called Is There Anyone Out There? Particularly relevant with the Royal Observatory in Greenwich announcing recently that they've discovered some new things, they've seen some new things that could potentially indicate that maybe at some point there might have been some life on Venus, or there might be life on Venus. So really interesting to make a connection there. This project's actually based on Mars, so again, if you want to hold your phone or something over the QR code, you can take you straight to the resource, but Google will find it too. It was produced with people from Imperial College who are working on Mars projects alongside primary teachers. So there's a real focus here on probably upper key stage 2, and you'll see where I fitted it in very nicely with the chemistry element of the Year 5 curriculum. Again, most resources are very easy to come by and use, but I've particularly picked around the one that I've chosen to do is called Martian Soil, is about materials and dissolving and separating and filtering, and you'll see where that's really obvious in a minute. So with this resource, the mission is for the children to try and find out which soil sample is Martian soil. So they get a prompt card that guides them through a series of tests they need to carry out on sample A, B and C, and within the teacher guidance you get really clear direction as to what it is you need to put in sample A, B and C. Really simple, readily available resources, flour, salt, sand, pebbles, etc, etc. You'll be able to read and find out what to put in it. So you make your 3 samples, and the children then either on their own or in small groups, depending on how you're currently operating your science sessions, would take some samples, and you can see the card there, and then they have to do a series of observations and tests. So the first one is it red or brown in colour, and it's a yes, no. So they've got to look at it carefully. They might be provided with hand lenses and explore and look at it. And actually it was decided in this case all 3 of them were reddy brown in colour, so that's not helping them decide yet. Then they have to feel them. Does it feel like flour or type? Etc. We're starting to A isn't like that, And then you can see in the background there's an opportunity to do some filtering, and they're looking at whether water passes quickly through the samples. So one of my resource top tips here is I always find using filter paper with young children is a really difficult skill to master, and because the primary science curriculum doesn't enable us to do that on a regular basis, so they become skilled at it. My science lessons that have involved this type of work can end up spending most of it with me folding bits of filter paper, which sort of defeats the object of the children doing their own investigations. So I recently discovered the joy of using coffee filters, which are really cheap, much cheaper than especially bought filter paper, and over a plastic cup, and literally that becomes your funnel as you place it over the thing. You put your sample in, you put your water in, and then the children can really clearly see in their plastic cups which one the water's coming through quickly or slowly. So you can see that, you know, A was quite quick in that sample, etc., etc. There's the. It also allows you to see perhaps if there's a little bit more evidence for some of the other questions, like does that look like flour in sample B? Does it look like there was any flour in sample A? Not quite sure is an option, and might to do another investigation. There's an opportunity for them to do some evaporation about whether it contains salt, etc. Starting to introduce pH scales, looking at whether it's acidic or not, and so on. Sorry, flick again too quickly. So that's one activity from this book called "Is There Anyone Out There?" This resource. This one particular one is Martian soil. You can then take Martian soil further and look at microorganisms. So there's an opportunity to add yeast to one of the samples and see if you can grow something in it, and so on and so on. And landing sites on Mars, and there's lots in this book. But I thought I'd share this one. It fits really nicely with that chunky bit of chemistry that's in the English Year 5 curriculum. Okay, the next resource. You get your QR code for this one. This is Rosetta and the story of chasing a comet. There are web links to this on the bottom here, which you can find on my resource sheet that I'll send afterwards. And actually, these web links are really child friendly. They're beautifully made cartoons that explain the story of Rosetta, the mission, and Philae, which was the small lander from Rosetta that was trying to land on a comet. And it landed eventually not on the intended comet, but on a different one known as 67P. And the landing mechanism didn't open properly. It ended up on the dark side, so it couldn't send all its details via its solar panels because the electricity ran out. And it was basically sort of not a catastrophic errors, but it was a series of that went wrong, and then that went wrong, and then that went wrong. And then at some point later, the comet did move into a position whereby the electricity could be used to download data, etc. And I've even managed to get some postcards that smell of Comet 67P. It's not very pleasant, but they were able to download a lot of data from this little Philae. And the resource booklet is full of activities. As you can see, that's the front page of the list of activities there, all 7 of them, that have been created to take this story into the primary classroom. So it has a very, very real setting with brilliant photos in, little video clips that you can use to context set for your class. But alongside it, as you can see, I've chosen the forces aspect of Year 5, and we're looking at gravity as an unsupported force, particularly on planet Earth. So the one I've taken is called Meteorites. It's number 3, the example I've given, and it involves a bit of sand. As you can see, I've just used a tray of sand, and that's an old wrapping paper tube stood up in that. Excuse me, and I used the tube to create a base on which to drop your selection of balls. And as you can see, I've gathered a decent selection there, referring back to my cricket-loving family again. There's soft squidgy ones. Those metal ones are enormously heavy ball bearings, golf balls, etc. Different shaped ones. So you can see there, ably demonstrated by my son, the opportunity to keep the sand flat, drop a meteorite of different sizes and shapes and masses, and look at what happens. So there's the crater you can see being created around this meteorite, this red meteorite dropping, and there's a dent in the sand there. And you can then start to measure those dents. You can measure the depth of them, measure the width of them, weigh the meteorites before or after, change the height. So many variables you can look at whilst exploring this idea that things fall to Earth, and that gravity is responsible for that, and so on. There's some other impact craters being demonstrated. Interesting, when you drop a really light one, it bounces, so then you end up with different craters. You could link back to the Is There Anyone Out There resource, the one before this, and look at the Mars landing sites, and how the surface of Mars has been not created but moved or changed, and potentially by the impact of meteorite landings. So really nice one to explore, and lots more. There's lots of parachute landings. The activity called a soft landing is a really nice one if you want to context set probably something you already do, or lots of your peers already do, and build parachutes in year 5. But actually, let's set it in a context so it becomes really real and rich environment for the children to understand why a lander and the context of Philae not doing what it was supposed to do, which is quite common in the world of space. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one was produced and written by the lovely people at the Royal Society of Chemistry, and this was their global experiment for the year that Tim Peake went into space, and it's called Mission Starlight. So the whole concept behind this is around materials and how they can help protect the astronaut from harmful UV rays, and the resource has been adapted for us on planet Earth to help understand how UV rays can be harmful to us, and helping children protect themselves and others from that. So I'm going to share a couple of examples with this one. Year 2 everyday materials linked to the UV light and materials experiment 1A, and again coming back to that massive bit of chemistry in year 5 in the English curriculum around properties and changes of materials, with activity 1B, which is materials for the visor. And then there are a couple of others that I've popped in here because I've done this activity many times as a space champion visiting schools, and I sort of added things, so I'll give you my additions there as well. So first of all, you require, this is probably one of the few that I'm showing you that does need a little bit of specialist equipment. And initially you need these are called UV beads, UV colour changing beads. Sometimes they're called pony beads. They are much cheaper to buy in sort of a bag of 500 than they are to try and buy 30. For under £10, well under £10, I got a really good stash. And I found if you give children around 10 each in a little food sandwich bag, a clear sandwich bag, that's their sort of optimum number. And I'll explain what they do with them in a second. And then they go outside, and this is what happens. So as you would expect with UV rays, and I took this photo on quite a hot day. So they changed incredibly quickly, but these 3 that look potentially white maybe on your screen are actually really pale yellow, and this one here, this pale blue one, that may again look white on your screen. These are the ones that in this particular investigation the children need to weed out. So they need to be left with about 5 of these really brightly coloured, the dark purples, the dark pinks. Those are the most useful ones for the investigation. These other ones don't change quickly or obviously enough because they require much stronger UV rays that we can either use in the classroom. On a hot day they will change, but on a sort of dreary day in January, they're the ones to ditch. So if you give them 10, they sift out the ones, and then they end up with with a set that they can carry out their tests on. There's my 5 that I chose. You also need a source of UV light. So on a sunny day, you could do this outside with the children having their own bag and their own space, and you don't require this piece of equipment. But as a carousel or a series of activities, I found having these at least one per group is really helpful. And you can see the particular brand that I purchased. They are retail RRPs at about 20 quid, but I've always been able to get them on Amazon and other online suppliers for around a £5. And they come with a set of batteries inside, and as you can see, they're multi UV bulbs, blue light, UV light that you can use, and they change quite quickly the colour of the beads. And the children have to quickly learn how to, what I always call, zero the beads and get them back to white by taking away the source of UV light. They put them under their armpits in their jumpers, hide them under the table, so that they can carry out the next test from 0. And I've done this all the way with reception, all the way up to year 6 on many occasions. So also coming with the resource is this, which I printed out several copies, and I've laminated them because they get really mucky in lots of them, and they just need a quick wipe, and I'm not reprinting all the time. So this is your colour changing guide, very simple, 1 to 10. 1 and 0 is great, there's high levels of UV protection. 10 is appalling. Children find that a bit discombobulating at times though, because they quite like it to change. They like it to be a 9 or a 10. So helping them understand that's exciting, but actually that's not good for us to have something that it changes that quickly is a really important teaching point, if you like. So you can see my or 4 of my beads on the bottom of that card, and they're probably sitting around a 7 or an 8 outside on that sunny day when I was taking these photos. And then there's a series of investigations. So this one is how effective the sunglasses are at stopping the UV rays. So you put the beads behind the lens, and you can see I've labelled them all so that if child B comes along, child X comes along to the table and wants to compare activity, a pair of sunglasses A with another child who'd done that earlier on in the day, they would be able to do that. The next one is around materials, and I start off by talking about just materials in general. As you can see, I've labelled, this is bag 3. This is just lessons learned from repeating this investigation many times. I needed quickly identifiable, I was bag 3, I'll have all those back. And again, labelled sample A, so this sample A would be the same in everybody's kits. And just some materials, as you can see, there's lots of different types. This one, sample A, is actually the lid of a foil takeaway container. So if you imagine that would be white on top, and when you flick it, it's like a foil type covering, and then there's actual foil, etc. And then when the children have decided which ones are really good at protecting them from UV rays, so for example, sample I, which is tin foil, is great, you can throw in conversations like, but which one would you like a swimming costume made out of? And actually they find out that when you test swimming costume material, which is an interesting one to look at as well, if you hold that up to the light and stretch it, the UV rays, often we can buy swimsuits saying, up to UV 50 protected, but if you stretch it too far, actually that becomes factor 10 rather than 50. So all those sort of, health and self-care lessons can be addressed through that. There's one around sun cream, looking at how sun cream can protect us. So you can see what I've chosen to do there is upturn some plastic containers and put the sun cream on the top and then put the beads underneath, but you could do it in a multitude of different ways. And the example in the book is around making a sun cream, making a suspension, which is great in year 5, that chemistry aspect of year 5. But I've found I needed to start by using sun cream. Factor 10 and factor 50 were 2 obvious ones. I needed to start with that before I went on to the idea of making my own sun cream. And the final example, the final one here, is around a visor for an astronaut. So there's simply some coloured cellophane, some bits of plastic wallet. You can see they're in a petri dish, and you put the material over there. And you start to look at the reasons why perhaps combinations or layers might be used rather than simply, and obviously you can imagine that sample D there is a milk bottle, side of a plastic milk carton, that might be great at stopping UV rays, but can you see through it? And when you're an astronaut, you really need to be able to see through it, particularly if you're out doing your extravehicular activity, you're trying to fix the space station. It's really vital. Okay, next one then. This one is called Are We Alone? It's quite a new resource. It's only been out for about just over a year. And there are 9 practical activities all about the search for exoplanets beyond our own solar system. That was quite a new concept to me, not too recently. Yeah, it sort of blows my mind. So there's an element of it that you have to pitch when this is the right time and who this is the right cohort, etc. I think there has to be a good understanding of the fact that we have a solar system and this is what's in it, and this goes beyond that. However, there is some great stuff for teaching that beginning stuff about this is our solar system. So grab your QR code if you want to click on this one. And this is the only resource I'm sharing today that is specifically around teaching the actual space stuff that in the English curriculum is in Year 5 about the movement, etc. And the activity I'm going to look at with you is activity 1 called To Infinity and Beyond. The challenge within it, there's some great stuff for Year 5, but there could be some really great, the stuff beyond that could be used really nicely as a transition activity, perhaps Year 6 to 7 or 5 to 6, or even on transition days from Year 5s tend to get invited to local high schools, don't they? They could be used as a transition resource. Okay, so this one requires you to sort of get a little bit prepared. It could be that you get some black sugar paper. I wanted my resource to be reusable due to the nature of what I do, travelling around schools and working with teachers and groups. So I chose to purchase, excuse me, some whiteboard, blackboard sticky back plastic. So I got some large sheets of corrugated cardboard and stuck this sticky back plastic on it. It has to have at least 60 centimetres both ways. So you need quite a big sheet. I picked it up at Amazon online. It was very easy to purchase and it wasn't ridiculously expensive. And the amount I bought allowed me to make 4 or 6 boards, I think. All of this is explained in the book as well. And then to make it look a bit spacey, I used a silver Sharpie because I just thought it looked cool against the contrast against the black, and I used some silver gaffer tape around the outside just to seal it all off and make it look neat and a bit spacey as well. And these, I've used them 20 plus times now and they're still in really good condition. A wet wipe or a damp cloth cleans off the chalk marks, which you'll see making in a minute. So each little mark on here is a centimetre, and you get a little set of cards that say you're planning the orbital path of each of our planets. So this 1 centimetre out from the middle is Earth, and everything really nicely for the children to understand is done in Earths. So if one Earth away from the sun, and the sun being at the centre point right here, and Earth is 1 Earth away from the sun, so everything else is in Earths. So as you can see, when you start to map all of the planetary distances, so still right in the centre, but then there are 2 more planets inside of the Earth before you then get to Earth, etc., etc. And then comes the opportunity to make the planets and sit them on their orbital path. So I'm sure lots of you will have done maybe toilet roll solar systems, or fruit solar systems, or water balloon solar systems, or all sorts of other ways. I've always found that because the distances and volume and mass is so extraordinary, it's very difficult for the children to sit all that in context and to see that distance. So for me, the idea of working on a 60 by 60 board, excuse me, is really great for children to be able to see it all in one place and see it all in a sort of a size that they can handle in their brains, and actually the adults handle it in their brains as well. So I think the next slide's got some, a close up. So here's Earth, the blue one, on the 1 centimetre line, and then we've got 2 inner planets and 1 outer planet beyond, and then comes the big boy. Huge, isn't it? Then comes this second set of cards that you download with the resource that are about calculating what's called the Goldilocks zone. So if you cast your mind back to that particular fairy tale, Goldilocks doesn't want the porridge that's too hot or too cold. She wants the one that's just right, and that's what the Goldilocks zone is. So every solar system has its own Goldilocks zone, and funnily enough, our Goldilocks zone goes out one planet and in one planet, and in the middle of that perfect place in which life could exist is Earth. And for a lot of children, then that's information about why there might not be life on other planets. Perhaps we can't go right to the middle, it's too close to the sun, although obviously a recent discussion around Venus could be had here too, and out to Mars, and why potentially then Mars is where we're looking to maybe try and travel to at some point. Is there possibility of life being sustainable on Mars if we were to take humans there? So yeah, really fascinating discussions. And then you can take it much further and do exactly the same using the same board, the same thing, but you go with a different solar system. You're bringing in the idea that there are more solar systems beyond ours, which is quite a scary thing for children to contemplate, and adults. I find the enormity of it all very overwhelming at times, but I like the way this activity really breaks it all down. And it's lots of fun. It's great. There's great maths opportunities, as well as a lot of deep understanding around the construction of our own solar system and Earth's place within it, which is really key for children to understand. Okay, I think this is the last activity I'm going to show you in detail. I think, yes, I am. And it's, again, a relatively new one called Mission to the Moon. And it was produced to coincide with the 50 years anniversary of the moon landing. So it's quite a new one. And it's beautifully pitched across the primary curriculum. I've taken the space elements and a couple of them just to exemplify it for you. Just let you grab the QR code. Okay, so the two examples I'm going to pick here are around Year 3 light and Year 6 light, just all linked to activity 1 in the book called Highlands and Lowlands, so looking at the moon's surface and the mountains on the moon. So this particular one is about drawing the shadows. So think about the Year 3 science around understanding that an opaque object blocks light and a shadow is formed. This is about holding your torch in different positions and drawing then the shadow, so they would be given some Play-Doh, etc. As you can see, I have the same set of torches, but normal torches for my normal torch selection as well. Those aren't the UV ones. So you can see the torch being held at a position and then look at the shadow that's being formed. The nice thing about doing it on paper is you then can draw that shadow and maybe label it to say what your position of the torch was. And there's the torch being held at a different angle with a different size shadow. And then the second one, just to show you briefly, is around building the mountain to then match the shadow. So you've got a shadow and it's X centimeters, but I've got to build my Play-Doh mountain to make that shadow and, you know, work out where my torch is. So I've got a shadow of that, and then I know this is where my, so this involved a couple of rulers. This is my then Year 6 son doing this, and he didn't need my assistance. I did some of the scribbling of what he was doing, but he was telling me what to write. So you can see he's moving the torch set distance away, and then that was being written on the shadow. I think you can see that a bit closer in a minute. So yeah, we've got a 6 centimeter shadow, 10 with a 16 meter distance, a 10 centimeter shadow with a 29. So we were able to draw a really simple, not plotted, but a pattern was starting to emerge. The distance of the torch away from the object meant the shadow was getting longer, but that was in the child's own hands to understand that by building it in the context of a shadow on the moon. Okay, so the last few resources I'm going to show you are just an introduction to them. I'm aware that I've chucked quite a lot at you today, hopefully some useful things within. But some of the other ones that I want to show you might be particularly for areas that I haven't touched, or more holistic projects. This is one of those. This is an all-round space learning adventure, and it's from the brilliant people at the Unlimited Space Agency, and it's called the Astro Science Challenge. There are 6 missions recently rerun for children working from home in the summer in 2020. That's able that's all still there, all still available, all still free, and that QR code will take you straight there to register, to create your avatar, and to set off on your missions with rewards all the way, videos to watch, and as you can see, Tim Peake in space wearing the UNSA Unlimited Space Agency resort t-shirt. I'm very proud to have been the author of the activities within this resource. So each week there, or each time, each module, each unit, there are 3 activities: an English one, a maths one, and a science one. But there are also coding weeks, DT weeks, etc., with a space launch, a rocket launch to complete it. It covers lots of all of the space content, so it would fit really nicely with your Year 5 space topic. But also, if you wanted to put it into maybe a whole Key Stage 2 project, it covers nutrition and light in Year 3, forces in Year 5, diet and exercise in Year 6, etc., and a lot of, as I said, coding and some DT as well. So it's a really diverse, wide-ranging challenge. Lots of fun to take part in. My Year 6 class loved it. The next one was rocket science. There's Commander Chris Hadfield appearing again. This was originally to do with some seeds that were taken into space, and then schools could apply to have some space seeds and some non-space seeds, and they had to grow them and try and work out which ones they thought had been in space and had being in space affected them. All to do with, can we have sustainable life on Mars? All of this is real science. It's not made up for primary school children to have fun. That's the happy side effect. The actual mission is really real. But the resource that's sat behind it is still there and readily available. So it's not about downloading the seeds anymore. This is about planning for an astro garden, about understanding the need for food in space, and particularly around Mars, and growing it. Supported by the RHS, so the quality obviously is fabulous. And that QR code will take you straight there. I particularly picked this one out because I'm aware that not touched on many that are specifically Key Stage 1 friendly, although all of them can be adapted to be taught wherever. But this one I thought has a lot of opportunity for exploring the Year 2 and 3 plant requirements, as well as understanding living things. Okay. Depending on when you're looking to do this, perhaps right now, I know all loans of these are currently suspended, but they'll be back at some point. But it's a really good one to know about if you haven't already borrowed the moon from STFC. I did say when I was talking about Helen earlier that you would hear more about STFC later on. Science Technology Facilities Council have some actual genuine lunar rock samples that are available for schools to have for an entire week. There's a process of checking your school safe. Somebody will come and look at the storage facilities, because you're not allowed to tell anyone when you've got them. You can tell them afterwards, but you can't, because obviously they're quite vulnerable, quite valuable pieces of incredible science kit. But it's an experience never to be forgotten. My son's village school in our village had them for Science Week a couple of years ago, and the kids still talk about them now. And of course I went in, and of course I held them, and of course I talked about it for a long time afterwards as well. It comes with a load of teaching resources that you literally could plan an entire week from, very, very easily, with very little preparation from the teacher's perspective. But you know, it's pretty cool to say you've held the moon in your hand. I'm good with that. So to practice pulling all this together, so I've shown you loads of different ideas that you could use in that particular lesson or for that little bit of topic, but perhaps what you'd like to do is plan a space week. And every year there is an annual space week, and this year it falls, funnily enough, this week, between the 4th and 10th of October, and maybe by participating in STEMfest, you are already doing all sorts of things for Space Week. Maybe you're looking ahead to next year's Science Week with the British Science Association, or next year's Space Week in 2021. But this fantastic free resource has been written by 2 space champions who really know their stuff, and they have pulled together ideas for assemblies, ideas for Key Stage 1 rotors, ideas for lower Key Stage 2, upper Key Stage 2, and you'll find if you download that resource, you'll find most of the resources I've been talking about. So there you can see how they've planned it, and then make your own adaptations, etc. But it's absolutely brilliant, so simple to use, and might just stop you feeling a little overwhelmed by all the fantastic resources that are out there. It's very hard to slim it down. So you've done some space stuff, maybe you've done a week, maybe you've come today, done some CPD. You want to get some recognition for that amazing work that you've done. So there is a free space education quality mark you can apply for. It recognises that how you've used space as a context, and a bronze award is really straightforward. You plan some actions, you identify somebody in school to lead space education for a period of time, and then you write some reflective statements very simply at the end of the process. You get all the resources, you get some CPD to help do that. It's completely free. If you want to buy the plaque at the end, you pay for the plaque, but only if you want to stick it on your wall, if you like. But actually the recognition and really embedding space education across the curriculum can be really rewarding, and not just at bronze, but looking ahead to further recognition. So perhaps that's something might be worth considering. And that's me. I'm done. So before we finish entirely, there is another final QR code on the screen, and I'd be really grateful if you could scan that one, and that will take you to a survey, really short and simple, to just click in to say what your initial thoughts are of today, and it really helps drive the funding that we get from ESRO to do the sort of work that I can do today, and spend time with you. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to email me, I'm on primarysciencegeeks@gmail.com or at PriSciGeeks on Twitter. Just get in touch, and I'm very happy to send you a resource list with all the resources on if you haven't been able to access the QR codes, or you just want it to share with colleagues, and a journal article that I've written for ASE Primary Science, all about science space as a context for the broader curriculum. Thank you ever so much. I hope you've enjoyed today.